Welcome to episode 2 of So Human with me, Brittany Rose. Um, this is technically episode 2, although I really feel like this is episode 1. So I've been trying to get the podcast off the ground for a little while now. And I did release an episode back in, was it January or February? I feel like it was January we released that episode. But my oh my, have I been through so much just since January, and I feel like a completely different person. Totally evolved version of myself, and I'm so glad to have you here. Today, we're going to just kind of talk about a little bit of my story, what you can expect from the podcast moving forward. And I'm going to share a little bit of like my faith journey and my health journey. So, thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Having the level of honesty and devotion to live out your path and your purpose does not mean that you're going to bypass uncertainty, fear, pain, and suffering. Quite the contrary. As a human being, we are absolutely, even more so, if you're devoted to your path and you're devoted to your truth, the truth of who you are going to walk the path of immense suffering sometimes. And can you be in those moments of immense suffering, pain, sadness, fear, heartbreak, and still be honest about the path that you need to take and not take the easier one of avoidance, of disembodiment, of checking out, of taking the easy route just because it's seemingly easier in the moment. But every time you take the easy route, you're getting further and further away from your purpose. It's not really the easy route, is it? So, something that I do want to bring to this platform is my relationship to Christ and opening up conversation for your relationship to Christ as well and what that can look like. Because I really believe that there's an in between from being Christian and just not being a follower of Christ at all. I don't actually identify necessarily as Christian. I identify as someone that loves Jesus so much and strives every single day to be more like him, strives every single day to strengthen my own communication and open my own heart to God and the message that God and Jesus has for me. Humanity is more than a mixed bag. It is something that we're here to experience, to remember that the other side of that is divinity, to remember that this is not our true home or where we come from, and to hold that feeling in our heart and know that we are going home, and to know that the choices that we make and the level of courage that we choose to embrace, no matter how hard in this human experience, does have a domino effect. I don't love the word consequences, but yeah, it has the way that we choose to be and the way that we choose to show up in this world absolutely has consequences far beyond what we think. I strive every single day to get out of my own way and to open myself up to receive my purpose and to stop making it about me, right? Like, I do believe and know that we're all put on this planet with a purpose. And then it's like a video game. And then, like, what gets in our way is our humanity and is our trauma oftentimes. And then again, I mean, that's a whole other conversation because I also believe that usually our trauma and our trials and our tribulations and challenges and the things that we go through are exactly what are strengthening us and sharpening us as tools to be able to live out our purpose here. One thing that I'd like to talk about that I feel like is a very controversial subject is that I do believe that we live in a fallen world. I think that where we are is like a bit of a trapped dream, sort of. I think that humans suffer from severe amnesia, that we don't remember where we come from. I absolutely do. Even as a follower of Jesus, I do believe in reincarnation, and I do believe that we have been here many times. We have been here and other places like Earth many, many, many times, infinitely, again and again and again. And I think that our stories and our lessons individually and collectively have been playing out for thousands, if not millions of years. And yet somehow I find myself confused sometimes as little old Brittany, because I'm like, sometimes I feel like we're not supposed to be here, and we're in the wrong place, or I'm in the wrong place. There's a lot of confusion and uncertainty and questions as to like, why is there so much suffering on this planet? But also, what are we doing? So many people, like I just moved to a big city, a capital. It's not huge. It's not a big city compared to LA, but I just moved to a big city, and watching everyone in the grind in the 9 to 5, they work 8 hours a day. They're exhausted. They try and fit in things like time with their friends, exercise, everyday stuff that it takes to be human, and they get burnt out very quickly. Disease in America is rampant. Inflammation, chronic illness is rampant. This is the most city I've ever lived in my life. I grew up in the mountains. I spent 25 years in the mountains of California. I spent 4 years living in Tulum, Mexico, 4 years, give or take. And a few years on the west side of LA, right near the beach. That was the most city I'd ever lived in. And now here I am in Nashville. And this, you guys, it's one of the things on my bucket list, as silly as it sounds, to live in a luxury apartment complex. Like, it's just something I wanted to experience, which is so funny because there's the other side of my personality that's like, I know one day I'm going to wind up on a farm rescuing animals again, probably somewhat secluded with my animals, producing God knows what to sustain the farm. That is my other personality, like totally secluded animal nature lady in the woods with my animals, hardly talking to people. So it's so funny to me that I actually have like on my bucket list, like I want to live in a luxury apartment complex one day where everything is just included. And I'm just here to enjoy this for the season that I'm here. But yeah, I was in a bit of shock when I got here, because I was like, I thought it was something that I wanted. And then for the first whole week that I was here, I was waking up and I'm like, my nervous system just couldn't even compute where I was and what was going on. I'm like, I'm in the matrix. Like, I'm like hyperventilating. I'm overwhelmed. There's so many noises. There's so many sounds. There's so much stimulation. There's nowhere I can go where I walk outside and I'm in nature. What have I done? I'm like, what have I done? I can't handle this. Is not for me. I'm in the matrix. I'm more in the matrix than I've ever been in my life. And that's what I was thinking and feeling and being so overwhelmed with for the entire first week that I was here, and just had all this doubt. What have I done? And it just took some time, I think, for my nervous system to calibrate. And I had just come out of many months of like severe trauma, which I'm going to talk about too. I think I'm going to talk about that in this episode with you guys. My nervous system was just calibrating to an environment that I've really never spent a lot of time in. My mind was getting the best of me, acting like it was a death sentence and a forever thing, which is not true, because I had just signed a lease and blah, blah, blah. And oh my God, I'm stuck here and whatever, just commitment phobe. But this year has been really hard for me. So back last year, well, some of you know, so in my early 20s, when I was about 19 or 20, I started having seizures. I don't know if I'll ever fully know why, or it might be one of those things that like the older that I get, some type of wisdom will overcome me. It's like, I just really believe that as humans, sometimes we actually know the answers to things, and it's like something that was always there. And then suddenly one day you're just like, oh. So I do believe I might have that one day with the seizure situation. But on the other side of that, it's like, I don't know if I'll ever really fully know why I started having seizures, but I was 19 or 20 years old when I had a seizure for the first time. I think I had like 4 over the next couple years. So not a ton as I look back, but not normal either. Maybe by American standards, some type of chronic illness like this is normal, but not normal for me, for someone who had gone 20 years never experiencing anything like that. Went on medication that wound up working. Here's the thing, I was also put right on anti-epileptics before I even had a say in the matter. I had had 2 back-to-back or three cluster seizures when I had the first seizure, so they you kind of count that as one because they all happened like within a few hours of themselves. And that was from drug use. I was young and I snorted a bunch of Adderall like a complete idiot and didn't sleep for 2.5 days and had seizures, wound up in the hospital. They put me right on anti-epileptics before I even had a say in the matter. And I've been on them ever since. And I actually don't think I ever should have been put on anti-epileptics. Who needs to go on a medication when you have a drug-induced epileptic attack? No one should, actually. That's a big, big failure in my perspective in the medical system. I was put right on anti-epileptics. At the time, it was a medication called Keppra, which is really a terrible thing to be on. The side effects are wretched, and I had Keppra rage, severe depression. I continued to have seizures. I had like 3 or so more over the next couple of years. To this day, something in me doesn't think I would have even continued to have seizures if I wasn't put on anti-epileptics. I know that seems ironic, but I do think it unlocked something in my brain. After a few years on Keppra, it wasn't working. I was having more seizures. I had a really traumatic experience where I was driving one day and I felt this wave behind my eyes. I was in the canyon in Malibu Canyon. I felt this wave behind my eyes. I thought, oh, crap. And then the sky flipped upside down. The mountains in the sky were like a reflection of themselves. Everything started melting. The last thing I remember was seeing fireworks. And the very next thing I remember is still being in my driver's seat. The doors are open. There's paramedics coming into my car. My car was still in drive. I had crashed right into an electrical box that was not much bigger than myself. So if I had crashed a foot sooner, a foot later, I would have gone right into the mountains and probably died. And so that was one of those moments where I thought to myself, I am definitely, someone's watching out for me up there somewhere, because that's insane. Like, the only injuries I had were some scuffles on my ankle. So shortly after that, I switched medications to something called Vimpat. And I didn't have seizures for 6.5 years about. And then in 2021, while 2020 was a very traumatic year for me, I lost my best friend, my dog, who I had rescued in Tulum. And I healed from my chronic issues and the seizures with her as I watched her come to life. She was dying when I found her, Chuska. And she was hit by a car in 2020 and died while I was in Maine. She was in the care of my mother at the time. It was a very traumatic experience for me. And I actually had a dream 7 to 10 days before she passed. I was in Maine with my boyfriend at the time. And I woke up absolutely bawling, hyperventilating because I had a dream that Shuska died. And in my dream, she was sitting in the passenger seat of my car and she looked at me and like told me telepathically she was going to jump out the window. And I said, don't you do that. And she jumped out and she went into this wave, this pink wave that I understood as like the wave of life. It had like trees and towns and houses and everything in life was in this wave. And she jumped into it and I woke up and I was crying and hyperventilating, and I went outside, and I was under the full moon at the time, and I was like, Chuska's gonna die, Chuska's gonna die. And looking back, there's of course a part of me that wishes I just got on the plane immediately and went home to her and got her. But there's something else that can't be denied, and that's the in-between, the ethereal, the esoteric, the spiritual realm, the unseen. It's like something told me, God told me, Chuska told me that that was going to happen. And then it did. So, and then the relationship I was in was a very toxic one. He was very emotionally immature, but also like verbally and in his actions abusive, not like physically abusive, but he would tell me like, I was 29, you guys. He would tell me I was an old hag and that I was past my prime and like, oh, this ridiculous shit. Gosh, he still owes me money to this day. I basically became his mom and caretaker. But I was so overcome with grief. I've been massively independent my entire life. And for the first time in my life, I could not bear to be alone because of what I was processing. I knew I shouldn't have left Chuska alone with my mom under the care of my mother, and I did. And I couldn't live with myself for that for a long time. I stayed in this relationship longer than I should have because I couldn't bear to be alone. And one day in March, I woke up and I said I was done. I was leaving. I was getting the frick out of here. And I got out of our lease. I booked myself and what's his name a flight, went home, got a place in SoCal, and fostered a Chihuahua that I swore I'd never get attached to. I had had labs and Goldens and big dogs my whole life. And so I thought to myself, wow, it's the first time in 20 something years I haven't had one or multiple big dogs following me around. It's such a weird feeling not hearing those sounds of those feet, those footsteps following you around everywhere you go. And I thought, okay, I will do my civic duty and I will foster now. I was about to foster a black lab at the time, and she looked so much like my Chuska that one day I was like, I can't do this. What am I doing? This is going to re-traumatize me. But I felt like I had told the rescue that I would foster, and one day they posted this picture of this little tiny 7-pound Chihuahua, and they said, he was at risk of being euthanized, and he's only 7 pounds, and he's so small, and you won't even know he's there. And I thought to myself, you know what? I hate Chihuahuas. They're the worst kinds of dogs. They're so freaking annoying. I'm never going to get attached to a Chihuahua. And then I thought, fine, he's 7 pounds. I won't even know he's there. Send him over, okay? So I went and I picked up Peanut. Where's Peanut? He's sleeping right now. I went and picked up Peanut. Yeah, surprise, surprise. He's still with me 4 years later. I went and picked up Peanut, and I said, I can only watch him for 2 or 3 weeks max. I do not want to get attached to this dog. I'll do my duty, find him a home. The problem was everyone was just going back to work after COVID. And you know how there was like a wave of people adopting animals and dogs during COVID. So everyone had their pets already. No one was adopting animals at this time. So I wound up with this foster Chihuahua for 4 months. And then the 4-month mark comes and the rescue organization is like, we need to either need to adopt him or we need to give him to another foster because this isn't fair for him. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we have a routine. Like, you can't take him. They're like, then you need to adopt him. I'm like, I'm not adopting him, but you can't take him. No. So I was like, fine. I guess I'll adopt him. I don't really have you can't take him, but I'm not a Chihuahua. So I adopted him. And I was still very like emotionally kept my distance from him. I could still find him another home if I wanted to, and just suddenly one day I was like, I am so in love with you, Peanut. You are like, this little man helped me heal my heart in such an unpredictable way after my heartbreak from Chuska. And I love him so much, and he comes with me everywhere. He's always in my purse. I have a freaking stroller. He's got clothes. He's got sweatshirts. I am a little dog mom now. So, yes, rescued a Chihuahua, processed a ton of grief. Oh, I have so much compassion for myself at that time. In 2021, very end, November, December-ish, got COVID, had a breakthrough seizure for the first time in 6.5, almost 7 years. And then for the last 4 years, I've been having more and more seizures ever since I got the vid. And I developed exercise intolerance. I was very active for the prior decade. And then when I would work out, I would feel like I was hit by a bus or a train for like days. Just started developing like chronic symptoms again. Fast forward to August 2022, and I had my second breakthrough seizure. This seizure was a really crazy experience. So usually I'll have a seizure, and it takes me like about a week, like mentally, emotionally, chemically, to get back to like kind of normal. I'm usually pretty depressed for like a week. I feel like my brain is like really rebooting, and yeah, it takes some time. Now, I've shared with you guys before, when I have a seizure, I have visual hallucinations right before. They're called auras. For me, never want to try acid, don't need to. I have enough I've experienced enough trips. Thank you very much. So I was outside in the canyon on the land that I had spent decades of my life on, very indigenous, sacred, heavy, magical land with a lot of history. And I was out back with my friend Alana, and I looked down at this grasshopper, and it started to just warp. And I told her I was having a seizure, and I did. And she took care of me. I came out of that seizure. I felt very connected to the energy of death, very heavily, like in between worlds. Neurologists and scientists will tell you these kinds of things are just hallucinations. I don't believe that for a second. I've very often felt incredibly connected to death coming out of seizures. This one was different than any one I've ever experienced, though. Because like I said, I usually go back to normal in about a week. Let me just tell you what happened. For about 3 months, I was afraid to be fully alone, like if I went for a hike or a walk or something, because I was experiencing like, it's so hard to explain. I was experiencing, every time I would close my eyes, I was seeing things, but in light form, which would scare me because I have visual light auras before a seizure. So if I'm closing my eyes and I'm seeing things in light form, I'll tell you what I was seeing in a second, it was a trigger for me. And I'm going, texting my friend, texting my family, not feeling safe. I remember telling my friend one day, now granted, I come from New Age spirituality my whole life. I was raised on create your own reality, the law of attraction. I was a yoga teacher for many years. I practiced yoga for almost 15 years. Every time I would close my eyes, I said to her, I'm seeing a man that looks like Jesus. I don't know how else to explain it. That's the only way I can explain it, is he looks like Jesus. And it was in red and blue, the outline of Jesus, every time I would close my eyes. I went to a yoga class. I'd close my eyes and there he was. I went to the gym. I I was laying down, I closed my eyes, and I'm seeing an outline of some guy that looks like Jesus. And I didn't think much of it. I'm just like, what the frick is going on with my brain? I want to fast forward now to the end of last year, 2024. It was around the same time that I was talking to a friend of mine, different friend, and telling her about the seizure that I had had back in August of 2022 and how every time I was closing my eyes, I just kept seeing this shape of this guy that looked like Jesus. And I was like, what the frick, you know? I thought she was going to think I was crazy because we had just started talking and we were talking about everything and just getting to know each other. And her response, she was like, and she's not religious. She was like, whoa, Britt, you saw Jesus. And I was just so taken aback in that moment because it was 3 years since I'd had that experience, and yet I realized he was inviting me to him the whole time, like in such a beautiful, gentle, well, seizures are not gentle, but in such a no pressure kind of way. And I thought nothing of it back then because Jesus, just never even considered Jesus. I thought it was religious and it was the end of last year too that I also really realized that I was seeing so many people from New Age spirituality that I had known from spiritual communities in Tulum and West Side, California, LA, and yoga and whatever, that were leaving New Age and all of a sudden like posting stuff about Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Christianity. And I'm like, please tell me what is going on. How did you get to this space? And so over the course of a few months, I really just started to realize what had been happening and unfolding for me in my life for years prior. I just couldn't interpret it at that time. And in a very compounded amount of time, I just dove right into Jesus and the messages coming from him that are still very pronounced on this planet and very distorted and still misunderstood. But my point is that, they say that Jesus and God will call to you and invite you to follow them when you're ready. And I used to think that sounded like hocus pocus, but then I had my own experience. And you can't make this stuff up, guys. You just can't make it up. I experienced a lot of seizures last year. In January, I woke up with a busted lip, and now I still have a really cute chipped tooth from that. In March, April, May, July, October, and December. What is that? 7 seizures in the year? Oh my God. In November, I started to feel so desperate. I had just moved in with a family member because I felt like I couldn't live alone because of the risks of seizures and what was happening. I had eating disorder type behaviors coming up really heavily for the first time in a really long time because of the stress of living with this family member and my health. And metaphorically, I was on my knees and I was like, please, God, what do you want from me? What is the answer? What do I need to do? I need help. I need faith. Where can I get that? Please, I am so desperate. I can't keep suffering like this. And I saw one thing. Jesus. So Yoga Brittany was brought to her knees, and who was there? Jesus. And so I started to dive into not religion, not necessarily Christianity, but Jesus. And I was like, you know what? Who is this man? Who was this man? What are his teachings? What is going on here? And around the same time, I called my health coach and I said, please, I'm so desperate. I am suffering so much. I will do whatever you tell me to do. And so my healing catapulted. All of a sudden, my heart was open to Jesus and I was completely surrendered to God and to my health because I am devoted. I am fucking terrified. I am tired of suffering and I am devoted. So very quickly in the course of a couple months, I made big strides and improvements in my health, my mental health, my emotional intelligence, and my ability to connect with God and myself and my truth and my path. And while that was happening, my relationship with my family actually got a lot worse because, when you experience so much suffering and you get to such a severe point of just not putting up with any more mistreatment to yourself, and people that are used to you being a certain way and people that benefit from you not really having strong boundaries, they don't like it when you all of a sudden start to have a stronger sense of self and stronger boundaries. And so I was gaslit a lot. I was branded for speaking up for myself, and having a strong sense of my yeses and nos. I was told I was a dictator, which is the funniest word, that I was untrustworthy, which anyone that knows me, knows my heart. I am one of the most trustworthy people that you'll ever meet in your life, for real. And I think for today, I'll kind of leave it there because there's a lot more to my story. But what I will say is that because I became so devoted to myself and to God above everything, because we doubt ourselves all the time and we don't know. We don't know the way to go. We don't have the answers. So often we're just human, you guys. So I had to commit and devote myself to something bigger than what I could see. And that's not me. To me, that's been Jesus and beyond. To me, there's more than just that, but it's been Jesus and beyond. And it's not Christianity per se. It is not religion per se. There is something else in Jesus's love, in his teachings, in his truth that he came here to remind us of. The truth and where we come from and what the frick is going on here on this planet. So since I reached that level of devotion, my world has spiraled. And right now it is the end of August 2025. I went through a lot between February and now. And now I live in Nashville. So I'm starting over. I'm 34 years old and I'm starting over. That's it. I mean, I'm devoted. I'm in love. I am in faith every day. And I'm scared sometimes. But I said to my friend the other day, it's like a movie's no fun to watch when you know how it's going to end. And we're not supposed to know how it's going to end and how it's going to go. We're just supposed to have unwavering faith because there's a plan for each of us. There's a purpose in each of our lives if we surrender to having an open heart, honestly, to having a truth-filled heart and being an honest person, being honest with yourself about which way you're being called to go, being honest with yourself about the things that are no longer serving you and meant to be in your life. So thank you if you've listened. This has been so awesome getting to talk to you guys. I just want to let you know, this podcast, I don't have a schedule for it yet. I don't know exactly when we're going to be releasing episodes. Some of them will be self-talk with me like this. And I have a few really, really awesome guests lined up. I want to make sure that you know that this is not going to just be like some faith-based podcast, although we're going to talk about faith. And I want to talk about Jesus in a way that I'm not really seeing him talked about out there. It's not like you either are a Christian or you aren't, or you either believe everything in the Bible or you don't. I think that there's something missing in between, which is the undistorted teachings of Jesus. Not that me, Brittany, some little old Brittany, can find that and show you that, but I think that we all have this internal compass connected to home and where we came from and connected to Jesus. And I want to uncover that a little bit with you on this journey. But this is not going to be a faith-based podcast. We're going to talk about health, wellness. We're going to talk about taboo subjects. We're going to talk about toxic family members and relationships and how to survive and heal from abusive patterns. And we're going to talk about cryptocurrency sometimes. And we're going to talk about how to invest and how to get out of the grind and the 9 to 5. And we're going to talk about healing modalities that go far beyond the system of medicine as we know it right now. So thank you so much for coming on this ride with me. I cannot wait to have some upcoming guests on. I cannot wait to keep talking to y'all. So thank you so much. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.